a lot of exciting things happening up and down the Gullah Geechee Heritage Corridor here in the Lowcountry and beyond. Today, I talk with somebody who's involved with that, Marilyn Hemingway, the CEO of the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Marilyn Hemingway, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Well, thank you. It's been a minute, Quintin, but I'm happy to be here as usual, always to sit and talk with you and update you on what's going on with the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce, but always good to be here with you.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. I know that you've been busy, extremely busy throughout the entire corridor of the Gullah Geechee corridor and with the Chamber of Commerce, of course.
Yes.
So tell me, what's new, what's now with Marilyn Hemingway?
Excuse me. As you say, a lot, but I like to keep busy. So we've had a lot going on. One of our bigger projects is the Gullah Geechee Seafood Trail. And I think the last time we were together, we talked about it and about me working on it. But it is now live in the virtual world. We went live May 1st.
Wow.
And the original grant, which was from NOAA, is for the state of South Carolina with plans to expand to Georgia, North Carolina, and Florida. So that is in the works. But so right now it's mainly focused on South Carolina, but it does give a wonderful overview of Gullah Geechee maritime heritage, our connection to the water, the waterways, and of course seafood, our restaurants. But we expanded it beyond restaurants to include our museums, landmarks, plantations that tell the whole story, just tourism within the Gullah Geechee corridor, because we want people to come visit us and learn more about our Gullah Geechee heritage and culture and meet us as people. Sure. And of course spend their money in our businesses that deal with tourism. So I would love to show y'all some of the page if I could do that.
Yeah, I think you can if with the share screen initiative, I believe. But
yeah, you have to give me permission. I don't know if you're able to do that.
But
go to share, and it should be multiple participants.
Okay. Let's see. Oh Lord. Well, I'll tell you what. Until I find it, just go and talk more about it.
Okay. So on the website, it has some. I love. I'm gonna give a shout out to Sam Baker of Armage Media. Wonderful job. He took what was in our brains, my brains, the brains of our partners, and our focus groups and interviews that we did up and down the corridor, and really made it come to life. And so when you open it up, there's this quotations from cultural members that are flashing on the screen, and on the background is Mr. Rakeen Singleton of James Island. He's a crab or shrimperman. He's doing his thing, and then there's a video, the introductory video, and then we have an event calendar and all of our social media, in particular Facebook. But we have Instagram, Facebook, and one more that I cannot remember. Maybe Twitter. Maybe
Threads.
And so we ask people, Gullah Geechee organizations, individuals, if you're having events, send them to us, and you can do that on the website. You can sign up as a visitor if you want to come visit us. We have an email e-newsletter. You can sign up for that. We have a section, the About Us is about the chamber, the Gullah Geechee Seafood Trail, our partners, but we also have a citizen science page, because a lot of our work that we do is environmental work, energy work, and we wanted the citizen science to focus on the work that is happening in the Gullah Geechee community to address environmental justice, climate change, the actual work. So we actually have a video regarding Maryville, Ashleyville neighborhood in Charleston, but of course we're going to be adding more on, focused on the work being done in the community addressing environmental justice and climate change. We have a maritime heritage page, and that will constantly be added to and changed, starting in 1526 when the first Spanish ship arrived in Winyah Bay in Georgetown. And then it goes to the Rice's King, and just key highlights in our maritime heritage. And we definitely going to add a lot more to that. I mean, we just touched the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Gullah Geechee culture. I'm so excited about it. And of course, we profile the restaurants, the food. I mean, really good pictures that are just make you so hungry. And let me tell you, I think I gained some weight doing this project because we got to hang out and eat with folks. And then we have a page dedicated to Gullah Geechee voices. And these are videos. We took a week where we went up and down the coast and we videotaped individuals and small business owners. And they range from 20 seconds to 2 minutes. And they really just are talking about who they are, culture, and it's really personal stories. And I just think about it, I get emotional because it's just, it really is. It's beautiful. It's a very colorful, beautiful website that I think really reflects our culture and who we are. It really does celebrate the culture.
When you think about those Gullah voices and those Gullah stories, Marilyn, which one of those stories actually connects to you personally?
I had an opportunity to go on the boat with Mr. Ed Atkins, an oyster harvester on St. Helena Island, Beaufort County, and we spent half a day with him. And we actually went to an oyster bed and we talked about what is going on with him, his livelihood, his granddaughter, helping him during the summer, and what's going on with the oyster beds, and we're right there. And it's just a beautiful moment. And we're talking a lot of these, I say 20 seconds to 2 minutes. We spend hours with people. So we actually have a lot of footage.
You have to cut it down.
That you're not going to see. But that's one moment. We actually had focus groups also. We had 4 or 5 up and down the coast.
Right.
And just the stories that were shared with us. One emotional moment that still gets me is we had some folks from Edisto Island. And they talked about when they were growing up. And this is people like living now. Okay, this isn't something historical, but now.
Right.
And they were growing up on Edisto Island, that when a child was born, that the drums would be played. And they knew that the sound of the drums would carry across the water, and that's how they announced the birth of a child.
Wow.
Talk about chills. Woo, even now I get chills because, to hear that and know that the story tells so much on so many levels. Birth of a child, but we understood nature. We understood the quality of water and that sound traveled across it. And so many times as Gullah Geechee, African Americans and our enslaved ancestors, when you think of the peculiar institution of slavery, you just think of our ancestors were brought here for physical labor. They were brought and kidnapped because of their knowledge of how to control water and manage land. They were engineers. They were the medicine, the root doctors, the builders. And so many things are so inherent that we take for granted. But to hear those stories like that, it reminds you of our connections to our ancestors, but also to the land and the water, and things that we just maybe not have been passed on because you didn't really think at the time that they were necessarily important, or you passed it on, but you didn't give it context, historical context, which is understandable, right? It's kind of like, why do we eat rice? My mother did not sit at the table and tell me, we're eating rice because our ancestors came from West Africa and they were rice growers. No, you ate rice because That's what she learned from her parents,
Right.
their parents. I
Right.
learned it from her.
Right.
And we ate rice almost every day.
Huh.
I'm going to say every day. Yeah, I could probably, maybe once a day we didn't do it, but
Yes.
you know, it didn't occur to you. It just who we are, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I just assume everybody ate rice because
Yes.
everybody around me ate rice.
Yes.
You know, it's in different ways, you know, and you know, you just don't make those connections, but to have the honor,
Yes.
and it is an honor to have folks share their stories with me, and I know you understand that, and that pull out those stories and just have chill. It's a real emotional thing.
Yes,
And I'm that's why I'm so excited because
Yes.
this website really makes it come alive. And I want other people to come visit and spend money with Gullah Geechee businesses. I'm very, very deeply engaged with that. I want my people to prosper.
Yes.
And this is one way for them to do that.
Absolutely. And a couple of things, Ms. Marilyn.
Mm-hmm.
Phone's dropping. But let me ask you this. What's some of those connections that have been passed down from generation to generation that doesn't really have context or really history to it?
I had thought actually through the chamber work, and also I'm a commissioner on the Gullah Geechee Corridor Commission. So I'm also on May 4th, I was elected chair of the Economic Development and Tourism Alliance Committee. So we've restarted some work with that.
Sure.
So I bring that up because these two things are connected. In both the chamber work and the work as a commissioner, we just had some tourism alliance meetings the past 2 days. One thing that has come up is we have a disconnect to who we are for various reasons. And not everyone, obviously. There are people who very much celebrate who they are, but there is a disconnect for various reasons. And I'll give you an example. It's actually from my cousin. And I tell people this too. When I wake up every morning, and I think most of us unconsciously, subconsciously in our heads is, how am I going to navigate this world today as a Black person? We don't necessarily think of it as, how do I navigate this world as a Gullah Geechee? So, you know, that impacts how we navigate the world. So I have a cousin who I was interviewing on my show that I used to do. I'm taking a break from it now, hiatus. But she does sweetgrass Gullah. She's a shoemaker. She sells sweetgrass. Jocelyn Patterson. And I interviewed her. In that interview, she said, you know, she took a year to immerse herself as Gullah Geechee. Fortunately, it's before her grandmother passed, so she was very intentional in being immersed in the culture. Then she went to Italy for about 10 months to learn how to be a cobbler, a shoemaker. Then she launched her shoe line based on the culture. And now she's finishing her master's in historical preservation. I think her journey reflects so much of what happens, in particular with younger folks, in connecting, being very deliberate in connecting to who we are as Gullah Geechee. We don't necessarily wake up going, I'm Gullah Geechee today. We do wake up going, I'm Black, how do I navigate this world? Even if we don't articulate it to ourselves, we're always aware of the way I respond, the way I move into this world. There's going, you know, I have to understand how people may react to that, right? But so it allows for a disconnect. But the wonderful thing I think is happening, more and more of us are being conscious of connecting to who we are, opening our eyes to say, we already had the conversation, I'm eating rice, but really asking, why am I eating rice? Why do I go to watch night services? I didn't know that. I just went to watch night services because we went to watch night services and Mama and Daddy said, we're going to watch night services. It wasn't until I was an adult that I learned watch night services, emancipation. our ancestors were waiting to hear that the Emancipation Proclamation was official at midnight. And it evolved, right, into this religious service and everything. Beautiful. The more we learn about ourselves, it should give us strength because we recognize someone survived for us to be here in this moment. And I hope that answered your question.
Oh yes, no worries, no worries. I want to get you back.
Probably too much, but yeah.
Oh, no worries. And I want to get you back on the phone to talk about that more in depth. But how do you decipher the two these days, Marilyn, from being a black person versus a Gullah Geechee person?
I don't, because it's one and the same, but it's not.
Okay.
So I think those who and this is just me, my opinion.
Yes, ma'am.
If we have to label it, because we know race is a false construct, right? So, but if we have to label it in this limited world that we live in, black would be race, Gullah Geechee would be an ethnicity.
I see.
But you can't separate one from the other. But if you're Gullah Geechee, you recognize that as a culture, we are evolutionary and foundational. There could be no African American culture without Gullah Geechee. There could be no American culture without Gullah Geechee. But we've been the awareness of Gullah Geechee is rising. So more and more there's recognition of our culture, our community, and the impact we've made. So I think that's something that's going to be evolutionary, constantly evolving, but foundational in that they're just things that who we are, the connection to the water, the connection to the land, the knowledge we had, our ancestors had regarding indigo, rice. Those are foundational things. Our spirituals are foundational to jazz, blues, bluegrass. So that's the foundational part. The evolutionary part is we created this whole new language by taking African tribal languages and the language of the enslavers, in this case, primarily English, but also Spanish and French, and we made a whole new language. So the Gullah Geechee we speak now isn't the same as 100 years ago. The foundation is 100 plus years ago, but the evolution is these young people taking it and massaging it and making new from that. It's actually Gullah Geechee. It's evolutionary, doesn't mean it's different and wrong.
Right.
It means you evolve. You took the root and you evolved it into the branches and the leaves. Mm-hmm.
This is a redundant question, but what is the root of the Gullah Geechee culture today?
That's an excellent question. I come back to people.
Sure.
If we don't have the people, the language, the land, and that's just for me, and I think the chamber, it really is about the people. And the spirituality, the food, those are the, I think the people are the root, and the branches are the language and the food and the foodways and the spiritual practices and the medicine practices and the land and the water.
I know you keep talking about that, Miss Marilyn. What is the quality of water as we know it right now with all the growth and development and unfortunately gentrification going on along the corridor?
It's not good for many reasons, and that's why we do a lot of our environmental work. I have said this and I'll say it again. If we don't have healthy water and land and air, we don't have healthy people. If we don't have healthy people, we don't have healthy households. And if we don't have healthy households, we don't have healthy communities. You speak of the water. What does that really look like? The quality of the water. Quality has in PFAS, those permanent chemicals that will never go away have recently in the last few years become a real issue, right? And the stuff that may go away but still in the water, so that's quality of water. But also the other side of water is rising tides. Groundwater tables are rising where they used to be 12 feet now or 8 feet. And that's the water you don't see, but that's another reason why areas are flooding now that didn't flood before, because the water we can't see, which is in the ground, is now higher. It's closer to the surface. So for those who don't know what I mean by the water table,
right.
You don't see it, but it's under there. And what does that mean? When it rains, the rain has less ground to go into, so the faster areas flood, right? That's a sign of rising tides, because that means the groundwater is rising also. More rain dumps. Recent storms that happened in Berkeley, Dorchester counties. The night before, it happened in Horry, Georgetown counties, right? Increased hurricanes this year. It's they have already said there may be 7 major hurricanes that hit land. The water is already hotter in this past May than it was September when Hurricane Hugo came through. I think there's a tropical depression already offshore.
Right.
Heat. That has a lot to do with the water, because water is now holding more heat. Heat doesn't have any place to go where it used to. If we don't have healthy water, it affects our bodies. And if we don't have healthy bodies, and I include the mind in that too, that mental plays a part too. We don't have healthy mind and body. We can't have healthy households and healthy communities. So water is very important. And we know how to treat the water. We know if you send water through certain plants, they're naturally filtered. So that's the cultural connection. And that's why it's so important that we maintain land, healthy land, and get back to that connection. Dollar weed that people just spray to get out of their yard is actually an herb that lowers blood pressure, for example. Sweetgrass is not just a grass for basket weaving. Right. It holds the land together to prevent erosion, but the roots also filter water. So we got to get back to use of native plants, right? So water is crucial to our survival. You go 3 days without water, some liquid, you will die. You will die without water faster than without anything else. I think it's 3 days. Don't quote me on that, y'all. Google it. Look it up. And but it is. We know it's like 3 to 7 days. Right. You don't have water. Yeah. Our bodies are 80% water.
Yes, ma'am.
So yeah. Very important to who we are.
Where do you see and I want to get back to that in a second as well, but when it comes to the water, what other trends are you and your team looking at? What should be those connections to the Gullah Geechee culture?
Right now, I'm really looking at the natural disaster aspect of it, because this summer is going to be tough. And so I'm doing some work. We are solidifying it very quickly, so I'm not in a position to get into details, but you'll hear about it really soon. We are deeply concerned about these hurricanes coming and our community not being prepared. Water and wind damaging homes, and I know we're losing land. Oh, one other thing, ghost forests are occurring more because salt water is now getting into places it wasn't before. So if you see trees looking gray, like they're dying, that means there's salt in the water and it's getting in the tree roots. Or even grass dying. So those signs like that, but the immediate concern are these hurricanes, getting our community prepared for the hurricanes, and also heat. And that's not directly connected to water, but it is, because the sign of the water temperature rising is a reflection of the heat rising. And between energy burden, the cost, and the climate change burden of rising temperatures, and people just not having access to clean water or access to ready water, it has become more expensive. And that is a real concern, because my concern is people dying this summer, because they're going to have to make real decisions between how do I cool down, access to water, cool water, clean water, and preparing for hurricanes. And we need to prepare our community.
Oh God, I wish I had so much more time, but I have to run. But I wanted to ask you this: what is the progress on sustainable forest management?
I don't know. I just know the work that's being done by Ayers Property, and forestry is a big thing. I actually have them coming to Georgetown, waiting for confirmation of dates. Has many folks have them coming, doing workshops and everything. Recently, in my unprofessional opinion, because I'm not a forester, but reading and learning, a lot of the paper plants have closed around Charleston, and that has actually impacted the value of land, the timber, I should say, has decreased, because now it's like, where does that go now, right? That's something we need to be aware of. I think some of the things that we may need to look at, those who have land, is how do we use that land beyond timber? Maybe having nature trails and telling your family stories, inviting people to come share with you, start an LLC and have nature trails on your land, and maybe a cookout or something, or a barbecue, some family tradition. There are people going back to the seafood trail. They want to know more globally from around the world. People want to know more about the Gullah Geechee. So yes, timber is a resource, but I think we need to diversify when it comes to forestry. Nature trails, there's a whole thing, a possibility, opportunity for that. And that, what does that mean? We need to maintain our forests, not only possibly for timber, but for the beauty of the forest. So I think that's something to really look at. Good question.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate that greatly. And if you want to develop those types of nature trails, would you go after, as the Chamber of Commerce, or from the Chamber of Commerce perspective, I should say, would you go after grants and other fundings?
I think that's a possibility. So let me throw this out here. That's an entrepreneurship possibility. Okay. But so I think any entrepreneurship course that you can take it, right? And just brainstorm. Keep in mind the one thing when people on your land, liability insurance. But if you go through these entrepreneurship courses, any kind of educational opportunities, they will help you get funding, whether it's grants, loans, investors. That's another program I'm actually starting this August, a 2020 investment gathering for those who've gone through our entrepreneurship courses and been selected to be part of this 2020 investment gathering. Lots of opportunities.
Yes, ma'am. And what I would like to do, if it's all okay with you, is to bring you back on Quintin's Close-Ups in August to talk about this in depth, and we can talk about the heat plan, the hurricanes, and more about the Seafield Trail. And if people want to know more about that, where should they go?
The Gullah Geechee Seafood Trail.com. Yep. Okay. All one word, GullahGeecheeSeafoodTrail.com. It's all there. And of course, we have GullahGeecheeChamber.org, GullahGeecheeFoundation.org. But for the tourism destination, you want to, if you're Gullah Geechee and you want to be a local visitor in your own community, go to, or around the world, global listeners, yes, GullahGeecheeSeafoodTrail.com.
I kept thinking about that when you mentioned that, Miss Marilyn. But where are the top tourism destinations for the Gullah Geechee corridor right now?
Right now, I would say across the entire corridor, Charleston, Beaufort County, Savannah. Yes. Other areas are growing, and there are other communities who are doing the work that we may not think about. The settlement communities in Charleston are doing some work. Go beyond the obvious. The obvious is beautiful too. I'm not knocking. This is not about knocking. Right. But I kind of had this conversation yesterday with someone. I said, these smaller communities have such beautiful stories, and work is being done to welcome visitors. So go beyond and go find the Yamasees or the 10 Mile community or Georgetown. Wow. Georgetown. Or even in Horry County now, there are many recognizing Atlantic Beach are recognizing their Gullah Geechee and their Gullah Geechee roots, and they really are building activities, museums, landmarks where you could come visit, you know. And glad you mentioned that, because we actually have suggested days to visit Gullah Geechee on the website. So if you go to see the culture,
yes, ma'am.
Each county, we have like Beaufort County, Charleston County. If you click that, we'll have like a spend the day on St. Helena Island, spend the day in the town of Beaufort. We did that for Horry, Georgetown, Charleston, Beaufort counties. You click the counties and it opens up suggested day events to immerse yourself in Gullah Geechee.
Wow, that's really amazing. I really do want to continue this conversation about that and the other things that I just mentioned. But for now, Marilyn Hemingway with the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce, thank you for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Always. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Likewise.